musicians and devout Seventh-day Adventists. But the marriage didn't last, and when they split, Prince moved in with his father.
His dad was very strict, and Prince told me his dad had a piano, but he would never let him play the piano.
His father was a frustrated musician who would one day encourage Prince to play on his piano as a child. The next day, hit him so hard he'd knock him off the piano stool for daring to touch the piano.
When Prince's father threw him out, Prince moved into the house of a childhood friend. Together, they turned the basement into a rehearsal studio.
I started getting to know him musically at that time, and I used to go over and watch them rehearse in the basement. And I remember he was very shy.
At that time, he really felt like he had nothing. But he was the type of person that would turn anything negative into positive and see it as something that helped him.
Music was definitely Prince's way out.
At the age of 19, Prince's talent is recognized, and he records his first album. The following year, I Want to Be Your Lover becomes his first gold hit. After that, the hits just keep coming. Among them, chartbusters like 1999, Little Red Corvette, and the multi-award-winning movie and soundtrack Purple Rain. Prince is now an international star.
His need to be successful stemmed from not having that much as a child. Everybody needs validation, everybody likes that, but I think he needed the love and approval of his fans.
Prince had a troubled childhood, and it was made worse by something that I found in his medical history. He was born with epilepsy, a debilitating brain disorder.
Anybody that's ever suffered epilepsy or seen that in action knows how horrifying that can be. Other children don't understand and will inevitably mock you. You suddenly aren't one of the crowd.
Prince's epilepsy also separated him from the church-going community he grew up in, where seizures were often seen as a curse.
Epileptic seizures can be quite violent, and for reasons that doctors can't quite explain, there's an electrical storm that causes severe shaking, convulsions, and can even cause unconsciousness. But I can see here that those stopped suddenly when he was 7. Most epilepsies last a lifetime, but sometimes they just go away for no apparent reason. So I don't believe this condition played any role in his death. But I can see that there is something that happened in the weeks prior to his death that could be significant.
Thursday, April 7th, 2016. Paisley Park, Chanhassen, Minnesota. 2 weeks before his death. The last date on Prince's piano and microphone tour suddenly has to be rescheduled.
Prince's notes tell us that he was sick with the flu. The fever, the muscle aches, the lethargy would have been extremely debilitating, and it would have made it very difficult for Prince to perform. In some cases, flu can spread to the lungs, causing pneumonia where the lungs become inflamed and fill up with fluid. This causes symptoms like coughing, fever, chills, and difficulty breathing. Oxygen can have trouble reaching the blood. In extreme cases, complications of pneumonia can be fatal. In the United States alone, approximately 35,000 people die each year from complications of the flu. So, if Prince did have the flu, it was good that he stayed in bed and got over it. His show is rescheduled for a week later.
April 14th, 2016, Atlanta, Georgia. 7 days before his death. Prince is back on stage for the rescheduled last date of his piano and microphone tour. Some fans think he looks drained.
People that were closer to the stage that night, they said, he looked a little frail and pale as well, and they were still kind of worried about was he at full health.
In this cell phone clip, it's clear that Prince's voice isn't as strong as usual, but his fans are quick to help him out.
The audience would actually sing a lot of the lyrics while he played the piano.
Prince is famous for his after-show parties that go on all night. Yet as soon as he comes off stage, he wants to go home. He flies back to Minneapolis that same night.
I can't rule out Prince's flu worsening, but it's clear that there was something far more serious happening. Within 2 hours of leaving Atlanta on the flight home to Minneapolis, Prince becomes unconscious.
Wow.
Oh wow, that's a little tight.
What? Ooh, it's a little price.
You're so good at low prices.
Yeah.
That's a low price.
No, low price.
Douglas,
Low price.
that's a low price.
With everyday low prices at Amazon, anytime is a good time to save.
Now there's a new way Experian Boost can raise your credit scores.
So just by paying for my streaming services, I'm actually boosting my credit score? That's amazing. It's so cool that I can boost my credit score with streaming services because who doesn't have a streaming service?
Just by paying my monthly streaming services, I was able to raise my credit score.
I had no idea I could raise my credit score just by paying my monthly streaming service. We're all doing that, right?
Now, paying for Netflix, Hulu, and more can boost your credit scores. Download the Experian app now.
Excuse me. What year is it, please? It's a 79 LD. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Oh, I just remembered. Pompeii was destroyed in 79 AD.
What's the volcano called?
Volcano. That's what volcano determined. Mount Vesuvius. For real.
The 4 new episodes on Thursdays. You can catch up anytime.
My name is Kat, and I live alone above my cat cafe. When I die, this will all be yours.
I'm good.
On April 21st, 2016, Prince, the superstar who dominated the pop charts throughout the 80s and 90s, was found dead at his home outside Minneapolis. The world reacted with shock at the unexpected loss.
I just can't believe it's true. I just can't believe it. I just can't believe he's gone.
Expert pathologist Dr. Michael Hunter is now trying to determine exactly how he died.
Prince's fans said that he looked weak and pale at the last rescheduled show of his piano and microphone tour. Rumors that he wasn't fully recovered from the flu took a much darker turn when he became unconscious on the plane home.
Friday, April 15th, 2016. Quad City International Airport, Moline, Illinois. 6 days before Prince's death. Around 1 a.m., an urgent radio call is received.
What's the nature of the emergency? What's the nature of the
An unresponsive passenger. Was it a male or female passenger? Female passenger.
Just before 1:30 a.m. on the Friday morning, Prince's jet is met by an ambulance. Minutes later, and still unconscious, Prince is in the ambulance in the hands of paramedics. The paramedics immediately give him an injection, a so-called save shot, to bring him around. Within minutes, Prince regains consciousness. His friend Judith Hill is with him. News of the incident soon reaches Minneapolis.
I was quite shocked when that happened. I texted them and I just said, "Is everything okay?" Because it worried me immediately.
The information that we were getting was more of a dehydration that had happened.
Prince's blackout was not caused by dehydration. In almost all cases, the safe shot is given to someone who is thought to be having a drug overdose. The active ingredient in a safe shot is a drug called naloxone. It attaches itself to the same receptors in the brain affected by narcotics, and it immediately reverses their effect. I find it very surprising that Prince would have overdosed on drugs. He was well known for clean living, and he was strongly against smoking, drinking, and taking drugs.
I never seen him do any type of drugs at all, not even drink alcohol, not smoke cigarettes, nothing. He was very against that.
Backstage, you were not allowed to drink to excess and not at all in his presence. Drugs were a firing offence.
But I have here a transcript of an interview in which it is revealed that a member of Prince's own family claimed, allegedly, that he was a heavy cocaine user.
It was Prince's own stepsister, Lorna, who revealed this shocking information to her attorney.
Lorna, she was almost like a mother to Prince when he was growing up. She loved him very much, but she was concerned about him as time went on, and that's when she opened up to me about his drug use. Lorna felt that the drug use was so significant that he would die of a heart attack at some point. She asked me that if something happened to Prince, if he died under suspicious circumstances, she asked me to speak on her behalf about it.
This is a surprising development, especially since Prince was so outspoken against drugs. So I want to know, when and how did this supposed cocaine use begin?
In 1979, having spent most of the year recording his first album, Prince's record company sent him out to promote it. He makes his first appearance on the legendary music show Dick Clark's American Bandstand.
How many instruments do you play?
One of the telling incidents early on in his career was from the Dick Clark Show, which was a huge music TV show in the States. And of course, famously, he choked.
How many years ago did you make these demos and then have offers on them?
And he's completely tongue-tied. And after the show, when friends teased him about it, he vowed, "I will never, ever allow that to happen again."
You didn't know what you were doing?
Don't know.
The more successful he became increasingly shy in public as far as giving interviews.
There are many claims that Prince began experimenting with various chemical substances as far back as Purple Rain.
Only a few years later, after the global success of Purple Rain, a far more confident Prince is being interviewed on every major TV show in the world.
Theory goes that how he did that was with some chemical assistance.
In this clip from the BBC show The Ozone, Prince appears far more confident.
Radio, show sound bad to me.
Perhaps the drugs served a purpose. They allowed him to do the interviews and to connect with his fans and to, in effect, be the performer that matched his composer talent.
How you feeling, you alright?
Prince did not start taking cocaine for kicks. He did it because he had tremendous stage fright.
Unfortunately, as so often happens, what may have started as a temporary crutch may have developed into a long-term habit. I have here a document from the Carver County Sheriff's Office, which, if true, could suggest that Prince was struggling with cocaine as recently as 2011.
There was a woman who called from Germany who Prince was touring with, who told the Carver County Sheriff's Office that this guy's cocaine problem is out of control, can you guys do something?
Apparently, Prince had advised her to make the call.
If this phone call is to be believed, it sounds like a cry for help, which the police did not act on. So Prince may have been left to fight his apparent battle with cocaine alone.
If that happened to him, then that's extremely sad. Be really disappointing for me to believe that he was addicted to anything, because he seems so strong to me, mentally and physically and just as a person, so it'd be really hard to accept.
Friday, April 15th, 2016, Moline, Illinois. 6 days before Prince's death. After receiving the save shot, Prince is taken to a nearby hospital where he is kept overnight for observation.
The news of that emergency landing was shocking to me and shocking to a lot of fans, because this is kind of the first time we were ever hearing that there was any drug use involved with Prince.
So far, there are no medical records documenting his use of cocaine. But there are reports that Prince used another drug a week before he died, Percocet. Percocet is a powerful painkiller used to manage severe pain from an injury or after surgery. So why was Prince taking a painkiller?
On April 21st, 2016, Prince, the pop star, died. There was no indication as to what caused his death.
It's such a solid day because Prince died. He's like the face of Minnesota.
Now, leading forensic pathologist Dr. Michael Hunter is analyzing Prince's medical history to try and piece together why this supposedly clean-living pop star died at such an early age.
I've discovered from an interview that when Prince became successful, he allegedly started using cocaine. And apparently, he was still using it as recently as 2011. I've also found out that 6 days prior to his death, it was widely reported that he'd overdosed on a powerful painkiller called Percocet. Reports show that in 2010, Prince had a serious operation, and this could explain the painkillers.
Between 1979 and 2007, Prince toured almost continuously, performing over 1,000 shows on stages around the world.
Prince really pushed himself too much with doing the shows and the performances and rehearsals and God knows what else. He worked at it obsessively.
Good. Prince was an incredibly athletic performer. I mean, he didn't just do the splits, he could do them 10 times, twirl, and usually he was playing one instrument and singing at the time.
He wanted to do everything himself. He wouldn't share the work, even if it was too much for him.
Prince paid a high price for his physically punishing shows. In this revealing moment from a television interview, Prince's one-time drummer and former girlfriend, Sheila E., says he's in constant pain from performing in high heels.
You think about all the years that he was jumping off those risers. They were not low. They were very, very high. He was in pain all the time.
He suffered with his ankles and his knees and his back. Typical ailments for a classically trained ballet dancer, let alone a young guy who'd never had any training in dancing, had simply just gone for it.
He may have been taking medication because of pain, which is a normal thing. Anybody that's in constant pain would have to take something for it to be able to bear that.
According to reports, in the early 90s, Prince was suffering from chronic hip pain, and by 2005, he needed a double hip replacement. At first, Prince refused to have the operation because he had become the Jehovah's Witness, and they don't allow blood transfusions. But a hip replacement doesn't necessarily require a transfusion, and he eventually had the surgery in 2010. And yet, 6 years after the operation, when it's likely that he's no longer in pain, he apparently suffers an overdose by painkillers. So, why was he still taking them? One theory is he was taking painkillers to alleviate the discomfort of HIV infection. Percocet is commonly prescribed to patients with that disease.
A shocking story is published after his death, saying Prince was famous for his wild sex life and claiming that he died of AIDS.
I do know that he was a complete womanizer and that he loved women, sure. I think he had his times of being a one-woman guy for a couple of months here and there.
Women loved him. He's a man, but with this clearly very strong feminine side.
Many of his lovers were budding artists.
He would write songs for them, push them in a certain direction.
I will say this, he was very respectful. When I was with him, I got his complete undivided attention. It was very loving, very close, it was very special. Prince just exudes sexuality.
When anyone gets fame, one of the things that there's down with is the ease of getting what you want. I think in Prince's case, having not had much success with relationships prior to the fame, I think once he got that, it's not surprising that he then went overboard.
People said, well, he had hundreds of lovers. No, he had thousands of sexual encounters.
If Prince had unprotected sex with numerous partners, his chances of contracting a sexually transmitted disease like HIV rises significantly. People with this disease can suffer from severe pain from nerve damage, inflammation, pancreatitis, swollen joints, and other various disorders. Prince said he had the flu in the weeks prior to his death, and people with AIDS oftentimes have flu-like symptoms. They also can experience severe weight loss. And when he died, Prince only weighed 112 pounds. And on top of that, his own sister Tyka said in an interview that Prince told her that he only had 2 more years to live.
He said it a couple of years ago.
What would he say?
What he said was, I've done everything that I've come to do. So I was crushed for about two years.
But the AIDS theory isn't believed by everyone.
Prince being such a controlling guy, it seems almost unimaginable to me that he would have unprotected sex.
There is no public evidence that supports the theory that Prince suffered from HIV or AIDS. If he was in the final stages of AIDS, he would have been far too weak to perform on stage in the days prior to his death. So, I don't believe AIDS is the cause of his death. But I need to understand why he continued to take strong painkillers.
Saturday, April 16th, 2016. Paisley Park, Chanhassen, Minnesota. 5 days before his death. The very next evening, after his painkiller overdose on the plane, Prince appears to be strong enough to host a party at Paisley Park.
Everyone was waiting for Prince to come out to make sure everything was okay with the plane making an emergency landing, and I think they were just kind of worried.
But Prince appears to be fully recovered.
From my point of view, you know, he looked fine. You know, he looked great, just like the normal Prince. These parties would start at 1 o'clock in the morning, and you never knew what he was going to do, but it was always very interesting because I think he used that as his area of trying something new and getting feedback.
When he's not touring, Prince is writing and recording new material for his next album.
Prince set himself a task in the years after Purple Rain of writing a hit song every day.
He had so many song ideas, he just never stopped recording. He was in constant recording motion.
He used to rehearse so long, other musicians would be falling asleep.
Prince would stay up for days on end. He had a 12-piece band and recording studio on 24/7 notice. The amplifiers in his recording studio were never turned off.
Some believe it was Prince's alleged cocaine addiction that fueled this relentless creativity.
Cocaine gave him energy to the point that he would have trouble falling asleep for days. And the reason that he took the Percocet was to come down from the euphoric high of the cocaine.
What puzzles me is that Prince appears to have been able to control his alleged drug use over the years. So what happened this time? His close friend Judith Hill, who was with him when he was said to have overdosed on the airplane, something she said afterwards may help explain the events of that last evening.
Coming to you, fresh faces from home with new
News of Prince's death shocked. The pop superstar touched people's hearts everywhere.
I just can't believe it's true. I just can't believe it. I just can't believe he's gone.
Now, forensic pathologist and expert coroner, Dr. Michael Hunter, is trying to determine exactly how and why he died.
I've discovered so far that for many years, Prince was supposedly taking powerful painkillers. These painkillers have a euphoric and sedative effect, much like heroin, and they can be addictive. Prince appears to have been able to manage his supposed drug use for all of those years, but then reportedly overdoses on the airplane. For someone who is famous for always being in control, this must have been a terrible shock.
We're satisfactory sale.
Prince's close friend, Judith Hill, was with him at the time. She later reveals that the overdose really scared him. And that in the hospital that night, Prince swore to her that he would stop abusing painkillers. For Prince, who'd kept his addiction a dark secret for so many years, this was a major turning point.
Where there's secrecy, there's shame. We very rarely keep secret things that we're proud of.
If he was addicted to that, that would have been extremely hard for him to accept. You know, because he was against any kind of addiction. He felt it was weak. If somebody was addicted to anything, he would have had a huge problem with that and that coming out.
Wednesday, April 20th, 2016. North Memorial Medical Center, Robbinsdale, Minnesota. The day before his death. Prince visits his regular physician, Dr. Schulenberg, who runs some tests on him.
The safe shot that Prince was given wiped the effects of the drug out of his system. So, a few days later, when Dr. Schulenberg's test came back completely clean, that suggests that he was committed to remaining drug-free.
On the same day, one of Prince's assistants calls a number in California. She reaches out to a Dr. Howard Kornfeld and asks that he come quickly to Paisley Park. Dr. Kornfeld is unable to travel immediately, so he sends his son Andrew, an addiction recovery consultant. He will arrive the following morning.
This phone call to an addiction specialist strongly suggests that Prince was seriously addicted to painkillers and that he was determined to kick the habit.
Wednesday night, April 20th, 2016. Paisley Park, Chanhassen, Minnesota. 8 hours before his death. That night, Prince dines alone. His chef later tells police that he looked pale and unwell. Thursday, April 21st, 2016. According to reports, the following morning, Prince is nowhere to be found. Andrew Kornfeld arrives from Los Angeles. He joins Prince's assistants in searching for him. When they head towards his private apartment, they get a terrible shock. Prince lies unconscious in the elevator. He's not breathing and has no pulse. 9:43 a.m. Kornfeld calls 911. When the emergency services arrive, they find Prince unresponsive. 10:07 a.m. Prince is pronounced dead. They estimate he has been dead for at least 6 hours.
Good day. We are coming on the air with breaking news about the death of an American music icon. Prince, the innovative, one-of-a-kind artist who's given us so much great music over the decades, has been found dead.
Investigators find no evidence of foul play.
There were no obvious signs of trauma on the body area.
And there is a glowing memorial outside Prince's Minneapolis area home as others are sharing their grief on social media.
It freaked me out when I heard it. And then when I heard the circumstances of how he died, it completely shocked the hell out of me.
When it actually hit me that he had passed away, I was just... I felt like just a part of me, my childhood, my life stories, just gone, you know. I mean, he was my first love, so...
When Prince died, you know, the whole world went into shock. The reaction around the world was incredible. Whole cities bathing the streets in purple.
While the world anxiously awaits the results of Prince's autopsy, speculation runs wild as to how he died so suddenly. On that last evening, there were no witnesses, so what actually happened can only be surmised.
He was increasingly frail, he was very thin, he was very troubled, and he was alone.
He had people that did everything for him. There was always someone there. And if the incident on the plane happened just before that, why was he left alone after that? That I do not understand.
According to Prince's chef, who was the last person to see him alive, Prince looked unwell. He said that in the last few months, Prince always had the flu or a cold. He hardly ate and drank very little water.
The symptoms described by the chef, loss of appetite, persistent aches and pains, headache, cramps, these can be caused by a lot of disorders. But there are a couple of other things here that lead me to believe that he could have been suffering from severe depression. A Paisley Park employee claims to have found a suicide note written by Prince. So the question I have is, did Prince take his own life?
On Thursday, April 21st, 2016, Prince, the pop megastar, died alone at his home in Paisley Park. At the time, he was trying to kick a long-term drug addiction. Now, forensic pathologist Dr. Michael Hunter is trying to discover how and why he died.
Prince's chef, who was the last person to see him alive, said he had symptoms that suggest he was suffering from depression. Then a Paisley Park employee reportedly finds a suicide note, and in it, he claims that Prince said, that he needs to stop the pain, even if it means ending everything, and that it was time for him to go. If this is to be believed, what I need to understand is what pain is he referring to?
At Prince's funeral, his former girlfriend, Anna Fantastic, receives some shocking news.
I heard from a family member that he may have had early onset Alzheimer's. They said he was using the monitor on stage already for his lyrics.